everyone, welcome to my video blog, and we're still in our jolly sessions about in sickness and in hell. Today I would like to ask the question, is your demon possession causing your mental illness? So obviously I'm speaking again from my experience, and I'm sharing the things that I have encountered in a very unhealthy Christian group, and I'm also sharing how what they were trying to do did not help me and how things ended up helping me. But disclaimer, this is all stuff that helped me, and if it's not helpful to you, feel free to put it on a shelf and discard it if needed. I'm a student of psychology. I've studied psychology in college, but I can't diagnose or treat anything, so please don't look at me or what I have to say in that way. Before I joined my unhealthy gang, I was in a inpatient treatment for 3 months, and basically moved to the town where I ended up meeting these people, and still needed a lot of processing and talk therapy. And I had trouble finding the right fit of a therapist. So I ended up seeing someone who said some things to me that were upsetting to me at the time, or at least I didn't like them. And so I kind of quit going to him. And then I started to meet them, and I didn't feel like I needed to go to any more therapy. But in all fairness to them, the cult leader is a professional psychology person. He has a degree in adult education. He never discouraged me from going to therapy. I remember him specifically saying, no, we would never say that. So if you need to go, go. But because this therapist had said to me that basically he was describing my reasoning, my thinking, what gave me hope through my life as these worlds that I created. Because I suffered from depression and suicidal thoughts, obsession with suicide for over a decade. And so what he said to me was that my faith in God was equally basically a fantasy world, like I'm gonna be this awesome actress, and all my needs are gonna be met when I'm famous. He kind of put that in the same category, and that was offensive to me. I realized that man is not a Christian. I can't go here anymore. So I quit going. And how did I get initially so much better? You might have heard me already talk about this in the interview with my friend Ashley, the one on identifying and overcoming spiritual abuse. It's also on my channel. And so basically they helped me to a higher standard of thought. And that was brilliant. It was so helpful. I mean it. For me, that was exactly what I needed to hear and what helped me. Maybe it was just the right time. It just clicked. So I'm saying it in other words. When I would have some kind of triggering thing happening and I'd feel any kind of bad feeling, and then I would dwell on it, and all these, it would spiral into this suicidal theater in my mind. They told me to actually be a Christian and believe in God and counter those thoughts and feelings by rejecting them, binding them in the name of Christ, and speaking truth into my mind and into my being. So I would memorize Bible verses, and the one that really stuck with me was from Psalm 23. Goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will stay in the house of the Lord forever. So once you counter these negative thoughts that manifest in feelings and in overeating or overdrinking or any kind of self-harm, then wow, that can make a major difference. And you can imagine, I lightened up. It was like a load was lifted off my shoulders. Suddenly, I wasn't so self-obsessed anymore with how do I feel? I'm feeling so bad. I have nothing to live for. There's only darkness in my future. I might as well kill myself. And how am I going to do that? And am I going to make it look like an accident? And so I was done with that. I was now actually believing that God was good and He had good things for me in store for me. That was wonderful. And you wouldn't believe it. People around me, my parents included, were noticing that I changed, that I changed for the better. And it apparently seemed like I was on a good path. So that was all the stuff that they taught me. One of my other major problems they call that merging, which is a way for someone to cope with trauma from childhood. Merging was not addressed. And merging is when you basically lack your own identity and you try to find someone that you can merge with and vicariously get an identity through them. And this is actually, I think I can say I've observed that very clearly, underlying cause why people fall for any kind of abuse, that goes on. Because they have now placed their need for being someone, feeling like they have a purpose in life, in someone else's hands. And so in my unhealthy situation, now I had people who were telling me who I was. I was a child of God, and it was wonderful. And I was part of their group. And it became much, much more us versus them in the development of this it started out as a movement, ecumenical, but it turned into this thing where you had to choose, were you part of that church where the guy started out in, or were you part of the group, or are you going to go somewhere completely different? And for me, it was like, no, here is where I found healing. I can trust these people, and they have all these awesome things to say about me. And obviously, with that honeymoon stage, I missed the red flags, and some of the red flags early on were control and expecting me to be obedient to every little thing they would say and to not be critical. But those things I just brushed aside. So how does demon possession now come into this? You remember there's this little mentioning in one of the Gospels that Jesus cast out 7 demons out of Mary Magdalene, something like that. At some point, my good friend in the cult and I, we were chuckling because out of us had already been cast out thousands of demons, it feels like. And they started to lose their focus on God's goodness. That's kind of what happened. If it had all stayed in this element of counter, this habitual ruminating on negativity, counter that with putting positivity in there. If it had stayed there, that would have been fine probably, but suddenly it was this, well, yes, where do you get all this? You get it here. Out there, there's nothing for you. So my issue of merging was milked to the nth degree. I became this thing that could only exist on the mothership of this group. And so guess what? Big surprise. I didn't stay well for very long. And none of us in the group was consistently in a good place because we all learned to just kind of copy the leaders and speak their talk and try to dress like them and behave like them. And that caused a lot of new problems or old problems to re-emerge. And it also showed that the leaders had an incredible focus on sin, darkness. Suddenly it was like you can only get to the light when you focus in, really hone in on your darkness, on your sin, when you talk about it, when you tell us about it. when you pray about it, when you do a lot of asking God to free you from it. But guess what? That doesn't really work. And I'm not the only one that suffered severely, because when you start looking into the darkness a lot, it's kind of a bottomless pit. And the consequences, the fruit of it all was I found myself depressed again. And on top of that, realizing more and more that apparently the Holy Spirit wasn't doing all the things that I was promised he or she was going to do in my life. So they started to look down on me. Suddenly, from the promising, potential prophet, I turned into this needy, critical, depressed person, and at the end of the day, a woman. So I was kind of dropped a little bit like a hot potato. And yeah, I'm not saying I blame them for any of the ups and downs, but I see how what they tried to do was helpful at first, and then I see how they kept on trying to help made things incredibly bad. And this is really where the demon possession comes in. Suddenly they believed in the leader was just into psycho, I don't want to say new agey babble, but it was Christian, but it was extra. It wasn't something that you remember having heard from Jesus. So one thing is this, you can be demon possessed in your spirit or in your soul or in your body, and then there's all these layers, and you have to make sure that you cast the demons out from every layer, or it's not really legit and you're still demon possessed. And so that was how they tried to explain why we were all such losers, because we needed them again. And the leader would have to say again and again, don't look to me as your daddy, I'm not your daddy. Well, but for many of us, the harsh treatment was very familiar, reminiscent of childhood memories, if you will. So on top, with the control, no, you don't do that, or yes, you get to do that, or a little bit of affirmation every once in a while, that was all stuff that felt a lot like dad to me. Looking back, they were mean big brothers, kind of the ones that only see the fault in you and make sure you don't forget. So one practice that they took on, which is it's kind of still a bad memory for me because it's embarrassing and it's humiliating, is these prayers where supposedly this was with the co-leader and his wife was also present. He would be addressing all our demons inside of us. He would start the prayer by, I'm gonna now allow these demons inside of you to speak. And so what I had to do, and others went through this too, was I had to say every word that came to mind. And you can imagine when you start thinking about every word that comes to mind and you have to say it, or you wonder if you weren't really transparent, if you were holding on to your demons. I said all sorts of words, and that was very, like I said, it was humiliating. And then all these were cast out of me, and then after that he was talking to the main leader and telling him what I sort of said, and thank God I don't believe they filmed any or recorded any of that, but it kind of reminds me of other major world cults, techniques where then later they have something to hold against you. And yes, later, considering what others said also, they wouldn't, like, they actually didn't really believe in their own methods or their own authority, or they believed that we somehow loved our sin more than God, because some of the things that others were saying, those things followed them for the rest of their career in this cult. and way beyond when they left, then they were still called by certain awful judgments. So the tricky thing with mental health is for me that all my life I looked for making sense of the world, finding peace, purpose, having my needs met outside of me. Even in Christianity. Even I was raised as a Baptist and prayed a lot and read the Bible a lot and believed, but I was still looking for something outside of me. And now I'm thinking of when Jesus said, from the inside will spring forth streams of living water. I think of that in a very, very different way. Pair that with all the things that I've already shared with you that I believe Baxter Kruger was right on with, about that through Christ and by Christ and for Christ and in Christ, everything that was created, and that there's not anything that exists outside of Christ, outside of grace and truth and God's love. I found something inside of me. Did others help me discover it? Yes. But those others, they were very careful not to manipulate, I want to say, my discoveries, but really pointed me inward. And they took this fear out of it. Back in the cult days, I would come up with, well, this is what I believe God is saying to me, and then be like, what, are you foolish? This is not God, this is your soul, this is your flesh. You have to ask us if you want a sermon from God. It was this Old Testament stuff, where you need this prophet to tell you what's going on with you or what God says to you. And again, then you're outward, and you're dependent, and you're merging with what someone else's discernment of God happens to be like. But I think a really, really good pursuit and a good prayer to pray is, Christ, reveal yourself in me, to me. And for everybody else, not just for me, reveal yourself in us, to us, so that it's experiential, so that it's personal, that it's intuitive. It is something that clicks with us, that makes sense, that has the right focus. When you give over your spirituality to someone else, and they are supposed to tell you what the Lord is saying, you get their version. But when you go to God and believe that He's super close, you go to Him, going inward, you meet a personal voice that you understand and that makes sense. I really believe in the witness of the Bible that the Holy Spirit is inside of us, and as we turn to God, as He hasn't turned away, as we turn back to God, He is right there, and we get to meet Him inside of us. Also in the Bible, yes, also in other people, but I would say eventually, or maybe right away, inside of you, there's a witness. And the Bible witnesses of that witness. You can call it the conscience or intuition or gut. I think it's still a little bit more than that. But that's a great place to start, inside of you. So that's basically what has happened for me in the past 10 years. And I thank God for the few people that had such a clear understanding of what I was lacking or what I needed. And that's why I passed that on to you. In the interview with David Johnson, Hearing God After Spiritual Abuse, you will hear me expand more, and David Johnson too. This is really not something where you get this quick happy meal served to you. This is life's journey, and I'm certainly not done. But the fruit where I can say I recognize I'm changed is I don't have to be obsessed with myself anymore. Like there's a need that has been met, and now I can think of something else. Like for instance, when you're really hungry and all you eat all day long is just carbs, carbs. Yes, it will keep you busy, and for the moment you won't feel hungry, but you will be hungry a lot. Versus when you learn to eat the things that your body actually needs, and your hunger is satisfied, your needs are met, and you don't have to be occupied with thinking about food anymore. It's kind of like that. I now take my intuition, the things I perceive, I take them very seriously, but I'm not constantly on guard or thinking about what do I need, what do I want, what is going on with me, is this making me happy, is this making me upset, how are these people treating me? I'm done with that. This is like, it's done. I want to say to come to terms, at peace with yourself is like when that need is met, it's comparable to a sense, like a sense of smell, sense of seeing. You just incorporate it. It's part of what you do, and it's very beneficial. It's incredibly harmful when it's not there. But when it is in its rightful place, in that balance, you can focus on, the purpose of your life, which I hope you, like me, found through that process of pursuing God inside of you. When I look around the church, the wider body, I want to just say that I'm not part of any particular denomination. Some were wondering. I'm part of a ministry, if you will, and they're mostly Catholic people in it, and they're born again or whatever you need to hear to believe that they don't worship any idols. It has been really beneficial to me because of the sacredness that they brought to my life. As a Baptist, we know the word, we know how to please God, and to this day, sometimes when I have discussions with my mentors or peers or whatever you want to call them, people that I really click with, recently they were saying, so Paul is saying that, in what verse is that in the Bible? And so I said, yeah, Matthew 18. Because in the past we've been talking a lot about Matthew 18. And they were like, oh, okay, Matthew 18, that's where Paul was talking about something. It's like, you guys, you Catholics, come on. Paul is acts and forward. He was not mentioned in the Gospels. Oh, well, we're having a good time. But so when you look at the body of Christ, you hear a lot of focusing on people's behavior. And I don't think that's our job. Here's my vision for the church. Don't come here to be condoned. Don't come here to be condemned. Come here if you want to change your mind about God. And that is essentially what has, I don't want to say cured, but what has put me on a very sturdy, good path. I focused on God. I didn't focus on my problems. I focused on God. And as I changed my mind about him, as he became so much bigger and better than I could imagine, a lot of other things fell away. Needs were met that just by thinking about them and trying to meet them or praying them away or whatever wouldn't go anywhere, but just magnify it. They're gone. God has changed my heart. And you could say it is because I have changed my mind about him, which allowed me to receive his goodness for me in every aspect that I can think of. That is an ongoing process, and that is why I find life now pleasurable. I find it enjoyable. So I hope what I shared with you today was helpful for you. Did I actually answer the question if your demon possession is causing your mental health problems? Well, I kind of, that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek to ask that. I want to say, for me, I don't know if there ever was any demon. I just know that I had a lot of bad thoughts about God and bad thoughts about myself and other people. And they really caused me to look for hope and love in all the wrong places and all the wrong habits and lifestyle choices. And that was, for me, why I was struggling with mental disease. I think the topic of mental health is such a personal, individual thing that far be it from me to give you a clear yes or no. I don't even know if I believe in the kind of demon possession I can tell you, I don't believe in the way that my cult believed into demon possession. I now believe that as you focus on God, on God's goodness, a lot of things are taken care of. And think of that demoniac, that where Jesus cast out all these demons and they went into the swine. It's a very mysterious story. But think of that. And then he wanted to stay with Jesus. He wanted to be discipled. But Jesus said, no, you're done. You got everything you need from me. You're free now. You've experienced the goodness of God. Now stay here and tell everybody what has happened. So, whatever Jesus did for him, it was once and for all. And what my cult was doing was this ongoing, never-ending story of, you guys are all so evil and you choose this and you want this, or you can't help yourself, so you need us. And if you go somewhere else, you basically say, I choose this over God. So that's bad. So I hope you heard the hope in what I was talking about. This turned out to be a little longer than I thought. And by the way, it's finally hot in Minnesota, so I'm a little on the sweaty edge here. Also incubating, so excuse my sweaty demeanor today. As always, thank you so much for listening to what I wanted to share. You have no idea how much I enjoy sharing what has helped me with you. And be blessed, be encouraged to pursue God inside of you and trust that He's there. He is there. You can always ask, if it's not you, make it clear to me, like another gut sense, like, I guess that was wishful thinking, or that was just me, or make it clear to me. Make it clear to me. I want to know you. So that was that, and I hope to see you again very soon. Be blessed abundantly. Bye.